Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun,
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abi.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Hey, Connected Life peeps, Justin here, and pretty excited about today's episode.
Yeah,
we have
very
a
excited.
mother-daughter duo who are gonna have a conversation with us about their journey of reconciliation.
You know, we get asked this all the time because we have the Father series. People are like chanting all over. Mother series, Mother series.
We're going to do that. We're going to do that sometime soon.
Someday.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Mhm.
But recently, Abby was chatting with a doctor and confirmed all of her problems, which is a really cool thing for a couple of reasons.
I am so, just so you all know that we already started a recording once, but Justin thought we were too out of control. So this is the second one. And I'm surprised that he's like, let's start the second one with your doctor's diagnosis. Well, I think what you're talking about, there was a couple of things that delighted me. The doctor was looking at my genes and he goes, oh, you have a gene from your mom and your dad that means you have no short-term memory.
Yes.
And he started laughing and he's like, you're the type of person that gets lost in a parking lot.
This is true.
You're the type of person that like can't remember where you put your keys.
Yes.
Wow. So I just felt like super validated. Like, you think that I just don't care. It's in my genes.
What's interesting is she feels validated.
I was going to ask, but you probably felt very validated.
I feel very validated too. I was like, there's a real problem here. Doctor certified.
Just solved
also-
a whole bunch of marital problems.
It really did.
Yeah.
I think it really did.
He also said this, which I thought was interesting. He said that I have double worry genes, is what he calls them, which means that my body takes longer to regulate after a negative situation happens than most people.
Wow.
So it like
Whoa.
what could like some people could like come out of a situation and
Maybe like
instantly
somebody
forget.
gets scared because somebody jumps out and goes booga booga.
This is a real story from
This
our
is real.
marriage.
This is actually real.
I can't handle it. If he jumps out and scares me for the next hour, my adrenaline is still coming down.
Right.
It's like too much.
It's
I tell
also
him you're
this
going to kill me.
Crazy delay, and do not scream, lovely, you scream. But it's like this crazy delay, and she stares at you and then starts screaming erratically at the top of her lungs. Yeah.
Her body's like, wait. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. But
And go and never stop.
Yeah.
what's really cool is we got a lot of answers, and we've those of you who've been listening, if you've been listening the last couple of weeks.
Listen, I don't want to say we have a lot of answers. I had a doctor's appointment today. We had some answers. I don't like to, every time I see a doctor, all of my friends are like, oh yeah, this sounds so hopeful. This is it. This is the thing. And I don't like to
Wow,
do
you
that.
took that a whole different direction than I was going to say. I was going to say, hey, it's really cool. We got some insights recently.
Okay, great.
Talk about triggered.
Yeah, no, that's a real life trigger for our full audience to hear. Am I currently in PTSD around doctors? Yes, I am.
Yes, she is. Oh, with that said, we have this amazing opportunity, like you chatted about. People have been wanting to hear like a mother series. I want to participate in that, and I just love the journey that the two of you have gone on. Today, we're going to be talking to Melanie and Amanda.
Hi.
Mother Melanie and daughter Amanda.
I'm the mother. I'm the daughter. The offspring.
The offspring.
And they come from good genes. Yeah, they really do.
Not really. I have some defects too.
We all do.
But Melanie has been in our world as well as Amanda. But Melanie, you've been in our world how long? Like,
Since 2013.
yeah,
10 years.
10
Dang.
years.
10
It's a
years.
decade.
Dang.
Yeah.
Oh, if you'd asked me, I probably would have said 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I didn't
been
even
a
think
while.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. You've gotten to participate with us, and so has Amanda. She's been inside of our world, and there's been so much that your family has overcome in your personal process. I've had the gifted opportunity to participate with Melanie and her husband Ken in their own personal relational process, and I've seen
All the family loves Justin.
Yeah, it's
Thankful
true.
for
loves
It's
and
really
hates
true.
him all at the same time.
Yeah, we have phrases.
Mm-hmm. Mhm.
Justin
Yeah.
phrases.
Justin
Yes.
phrases.
Yeah.
Justin phrases.
Or a lot of, you need to go talk to Justin. I've heard that a few times.
That's funny. That's fair.
I gotta imagine all counselors and consultants, they eventually get weaponized in conversations. We're like, Justin said, you know.
Mine is more like, so what would Justin tell you right now?
I like that. I
That's
like
good.
that.
That's good. But
Yeah, we've seen your family grow a lot.
Yeah.
And transform a
Oh,
lot.
you've
You
been
guys are
crying, man.
fighters. And like it has been a beautiful journey to watch you not get stuck in situations. So I don't want to make the intro
Yeah.
forever long. Let's just jump in. Why don't you guys start with your story?
yeah, where did it all start?
Yeah.
Well, the process of me repairing relationship with my kids started when Abby told me I was a bad mom.
such an abrasive way to say it.
But, you know, I am an 8 on the Enneagram, and there's no other better way if you want me to respect you than to be direct.
What was
So
I
real.
talking about?
I had told you, it was around the gist of, this was back when you were like an active mentor in my life.
Yeah.
And I saw you that day, and I'm kind of reporting a little bit. And I go, yeah, I just don't want my kids to suffer, and I don't want them to have this struggle. And you're like, yeah, that makes you a bad mom. But it was around, you know, like my angst around them struggling, my pain, or like my pain was so, it was triggers, right? It was my triggers, my pain on top of their pain. It wasn't clean.
Yeah.
They didn't have their own pain. Their pain was my pain.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had to do that work to unravel where they got to be a person separate from me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think I remember thinking it's creating a need for control.
I was so controlling.
Yeah.
So controlling.
But you
Yeah.
loved your kids. You had great intentions.
Yeah.
I did. And I think we all do. Most people do.
Mm-hmm.
I think you do what you know. You know, my dad was controlling.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, yeah, we talk about that in the book. We're writing a book. It's called Rootbound, A Mother's Journey, A Daughter's Pain.
Mm.
And yeah, controlling dad, controlling daughter. It's like,
The cycle goes on.
yeah, but I broke it.
Yeah, girl.
Yeah, I
did.
I did.
Okay, so we'll start with when you decided to write the book, and then backtrack
Mhm.
to what your guys' journey has been.
Yeah, so in 2018, I went to Amanda and I said, it's on my heart to write a book for moms. I want them to know it's possible to repair with their kids. But every time I like sit with God in it, it feels like half the story. It wasn't the full story.
Yeah.
Because when I look at my struggles, part of what helped me is the type of daughter Amanda was. Like she was extremely not controlling.
That's nice.
Yeah, she was. She was great. And she just, I mean, it's her trauma response too, like knowing how to manage me and handle me. And it worked really well for me, but it also opened up doors for God because I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just to help people get a grip and an understanding of me. Like the more you pushed on me, you're pushing my heels
The
in
more
the ground.
stubborn you become.
Yeah.
And so I would tell my kids, the more you push, the stronger my no gets.
My pushback will be.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so like, don't push, like give me space.
Yeah.
Right.
Amanda did that really well. She gave me space so well. I think she did a ton of praying as well. Yeah.
Dear God,
Oh,
help.
yes.
Save me from this world. And so anyway, I went to her and I said, you have a part to this story as to why and how I was able to come out of control. And so she agreed to write the book with me. And we just wrote stories at first, and just I would write what I remembered, and then she would write what she remembered, and we traded.
Wow.
And then we wrote responses to each other's remembering.
Wow.
And that's really what the book is made up of, is those stories. So it's kind of like a book of essays of events that happened in our lives that were important to our process. And yeah, it's been a beautiful.
What was that like to hear stories from each other's views and then respond?
Yeah, Amanda, why don't you do some talking?
Yeah, it actually continued the process even further because there were so many moments where I would write something and it would probably be the most honest I had ever been about that situation.
Wow.
And then she would be in the room sobbing, and then I would get this beautiful love letter back from her of her response. And we would sit there and have conversations about it as well. And so it was very vulnerable and really intense.
Yeah.
And it was like, we're going to release this to the world.
Oh, yes.
Everyone can read this.
Yeah.
But every time somebody would hear about what we were doing, it was like, you need to write this book.
Right.
So it was like, okay, this is good. We need to do this. But my heart is like operating
Wide
room.
open.
Yeah.
Could you tell us one of the stories that you guys wrote and the response and how that impacted you?
Which one would you like to tell? Do you have? Can you think of one?
I think the Dear John letter is the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Do you have a better one?
No, that's great.
Ooh, little teaser.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there was a guy that I had dated, and
What do we call him in the book? I forget.
Ryan.
Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
We call him Ryan.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And she did not approve.
Of this guy.
She did not approve of the guy.
Mhm.
He was not the list of things that she
She'd want
expected
for you.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of really great things about the relationship, but there were other things that looking back, I'm like, yeah, it wasn't the relationship for me. But there was this list that I felt held over my head. And so these are the moments when I'm praying to God, like, Jesus, like, she doesn't even see, like, yeah, this guy's not a Christian, but like, he's so much better than any Christian guy I've ever dated. And he's treated me so much better and all these things. And so.
Yeah. So when I'm in turmoil, all the control, right? I think this is actually the scenario I came to you about.
Oh.
When I was like, I
Yeah.
don't like this. And you're like,
That's true.
yeah, that makes you a bad mom. And then I went to my friends and I cried.
Which just for now I've grown and I don't use words like good and bad anymore to describe things.
I know you don't.
And I think it was probably a little bit pokey purposefully, but
absolutely.
but I don't
It was
believe
the right
people are
thing in the
good or
moment.
bad
No.
moms.
Yeah.
I
know
for
you don't.
clarity.
Yeah.
For
And
the
also, you
audience.
guys have that relationship.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
were able to say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying now
It
I don't
cut to
use
the quick.
I don't use bad as a
Yeah.
adjective now at all.
Right.
'Cause it is anyway.
Yeah.
Continue on.
I know.
It got the point across.
Yes.
It did. It helped. It served
It was
it.
10
She
years
needed-
ago, people.
She needed to hear it. Okay.
Abby's
Thank
grown a lot since then. Okay.
Yeah.
And Amanda was glad someone told me I was a bad mom.
God. Well, I was like, she's gonna push them away.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
she's going to like she thinks what she's doing is holding on to good for them.
Mhm.
She needs to hear that what she's doing is like pushing
Pushing
them
Yep.
towards something that would be worse. For
Yes,
them.
100%. That's what I was
Absolutely.
doing. I had no clue. No clue.
Yeah.
And so in this scenario, God did get a hold of my heart and he was like, I need you to write down everything you're afraid of concerning this. And I wrote down about 18 things.
You might have the worry gene also. Just kidding.
And this is the genius of God. He goes, okay, now I want you to write, or I want you to look at them. And I get to number 6 and he says, stop. And he says, every single one of these things have happened to you. None of these have anything to do with Amanda and her character, how you raised her, who I am to her, what I do in Amanda's life. Like, this is all about your fear. And this is all about things that happened to you.
Wow.
And I like, you know. And so then he had me across from that write down the truth about Amanda according to those
Wow.
fears.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a life changer. I came home and told Amanda all about it, and she was like, "Oh God."
Yeah.
Because did you finally feel seen at some level, even when she?
I did. Yes. What's interesting though is this hit me so much deeper years. Because how many years later was it that we wrote the book from then?
Probably 6, 7.
6. So writing the book actually brought up all of this on a whole different level.
Mm.
Where in the moment I looked back and I was like, oh, okay. But the
Thanks.
relationship had
You're
already
like,
kind
thanks.
of died at that point.
Mhm.
So I had harbored so many resentments towards my mom of like, you ruined it. Like you ruined the best thing that ever happened to me.
Especially with that relationship.
Mhm. Exactly. And so,
Wow.
and I'm like, because you couldn't get past what you thought was best for me, here I am in so much pain. And it took me years to recover from that relationship specifically. So then when we wrote the book, this specific chapter, I was like, whoa, like I don't think in the moment I had the capacity to grasp what she had said back then, but being outside of it, I was able to actually like let her words sink in. And I was a wreck.
Really? Totally undone finally.
What impacted you most?
It was very interesting that all of her fears were what happened to her.
Yeah.
I had so much compassion for her. I was just like, oh, and then so much understanding for her that I was like, oh, you weren't just trying to be like keeping me from fun.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like you don't get to have this great thing over here.
Right.
And
which is what you felt.
Yes.
You felt like she was just destroying your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, actually, there's a little funny story with this. When I had met the guy, I had told her.
So is this the beginning of like the painful stuff between you and your mom? This guy?
No.
I mean, painful stuff that I would say
I think it was it was exposing.
It was exposing, but
exposing.
Amanda had pain long before that, and I was oblivious. When she was 16, I started coming out of cycles of control, and in small ways, not big enough for her to see and notice after all the years of pain.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking I'm making changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the whole
so you're
time
feeling the best you've ever felt. Like I'm facing my
I'm
stuff.
doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's making plans to move out at 18 and never see me again except for on holidays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you guys talk about how hard the relationship was? Because reconciliation really matters if you understand how far the chasm is.
And before you get to that, I just want to say, I'm imagining you must have, because you're at the point of writing the book, so you've gone through levels of forgiveness. So now the forgiveness has moved, like the unforgiveness, the blockage of unforgiveness has kind of been removed. So now you can almost have the compassion aspect and receive her words is what I was hearing was happening. Is that okay?
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, so the tumultuousness of it.
Yeah, I was extremely controlling. Amanda, I'm gonna let you go.
Yeah. I was going to say it wouldn't, if you were a person on the outside looking in, you wouldn't have even known. Yeah. Because I was really good at pretending and I was really good at fawning and I knew how to control back. She taught me how to control her emotions so that I could stay safe.
Wow.
And so I knew how to rally the troops and get my siblings together and be like, all right, guys, mom is gone. It's time to clean. We need to clean up the whole house because if mom comes back and the house is clean, she'll be happy. Right. If she comes back and it's a wreck. Service. Yeah. If she comes back and it's a wreck, then she's going to blow up. And I was so scared of her blowing up.
Right.
And so that was something that I just knew how to navigate her. And when she talked about like, don't push me, I would sit there and almost look at my siblings and be like, what are you doing, you idiot? You're not going to
So you would control your siblings.
Yes.
Yeah.
To try to avoid your mom's pain.
Yep.
Your mom would try to control you guys to avoid her pain.
Exactly. Yeah.
By the way, have you ever talked to your siblings about your role in trying to control them?
I don't think so.
Just some homework. I know, right?
Podcast number 2.
Book number 2. My brother probably wouldn't remember it because he was 8 years younger. My sister, she would. She would have her own things to say. I'm like, I'm just trying to keep you safe.
This is the cycle of humanity. This is like hurt people who feel unsafe, make other people feel unsafe. It's and that's why none of us are really better than anyone else because we all have survival skills that we're doing to try to survive.
And our survival skills are going to affect other people around us. It just, there's no way around it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So good.
Yeah.
So Amanda, she wasn't allowed to have boyfriends. And so you can imagine all the fun ways I controlled that.
And the fun ways I got around it.
Touché.
Friends listen to Endless Love in the Dark.
Yeah. Have you ever seen that Happy Gilmore? They go ice skating and they're listening to Endless Love and he wants a relationship, but she wants to be friends. And Amanda one year, she's 14, I think, or 15. And her guy friend buys her a chocolate rose for Valentine's Day. And I go, Amanda, friends listen to Endless Love in the Dark. And
Like,
she's
shut up, Mom. It's just my friend.
He's just my friend. I was like, he wants more. And so that's my pain, right? Like,
No, he knows I'm not allowed to date. That was the cop out.
sure he does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Amanda had very strict, like she got grounded. She got grounded for a month
Ooh.
over small things.
Ooh.
I think it got up to 3 months at one point.
Yeah,
'Cause
because
things
every
kept
time,
coming out.
and when she would get off, she'd get off restriction and she'd be busted and she'd be restricted again.
Ugh.
And I had a pretty tight community, and they would tell on her all the time.
Oh, yeah. I'd be walking down the main street and someone would call her up. Do you know that your daughter is walking down the street with a boy? Damn it.
So you got caught all the time.
I always got caught.
She always got
People
caught.
wouldn't invite me because I would get everyone in trouble.
Oh.
Because Holy Spirit would tell her.
Yeah.
Lady at
People would
Walmart would
tell
tell her.
her.
Yeah. They're like, hey, you're that mom, right? That wants
Yeah.
to know.
And I want to bring that up too. There was a weaponized use of the gift of discernment and intuition, and
Yeah.
that has kind of gone away from me since I literally just took a season where I put it aside. I'm like, I'm not leaning into God. It's not my business what my kids are doing. It's not my business to ask God what's happening or lean into that realm. I don't even know if that was God all the time telling me that stuff
Sure.
anymore. Right. And so
Well,
leaning.
I also think we often can just tune into each other's frequencies.
Mhm.
I don't know necessarily that that's always what that has to do with God or not. I do think it's easy if you are focused on someone
Mhm.
and know them well to just tune in. And
Yeah.
if you tune in, you can become aware of a lot about them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I would have dreams about her. I'd be like,
Mhm.
oh, she'd be away at school, and I'd be like, hey, you like this guy's character, but you like the way this guy looks.
And I was like, oh my gosh.
She's like,
She's
how do
in my
you know
head.
that?
Cameras.
I had a dream.
That's impressive.
So yeah, weird things like that would happen all the time, but
But you used it for control.
I used it for
Versus-
control.
Used it for evil.
Yeah. Versus a relational connection of like,
Yeah.
hey, sweetie, what's
What's
going on in your life? I
life?
care
How
to
was
connect.
this?
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
How are you
Mhm.
processing through that?
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So you must have felt really trapped, Amanda, inside of those.
Yeah, I remember one time she says, you're going to go sit in the pastor's office and have a session with him, because I don't think she knew what to do with me at that point.
Yeah.
This is when we were actually kind of like button heads.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And so I went, and the pastor basically told me, yeah, your mom's controlling. And I sat there and I was like, I feel like I'm sitting here and everyone sees a smile on my face, but inside I am screaming. And that's when he validated that. And I went home, I was like, oh, he thinks that you are controlling.
She was like, we're never going to church again.
I was like, you're never going back to talk to him again.
Okay, so this is going on for years. For years, you are afraid of your mom,
Mhm.
and she is intrusive in your life
Yeah.
and-
so intrusive.
and punishing.
Yes.
Intrusive and punishing.
Mm-hmm.
But you're doing it all because you're terrified
Mm-hmm.
of her going down the wrong path, of it
Yeah.
hurting her, of her getting.
Which is
Yeah.
reasonable. It makes
Yeah.
sense. Like when I look at families, parents are sitting there going like, my job has been to love and care over these children.
Yeah.
How that is
protect.
expressed, like, can be done in a very destructive manner, a very healthy manner. But there is no book on how to do that well. You've just been tasked with this crazy responsibility and just navigating it. It's like, I'm just going to operate out of what I've learned from my childhood. It's like on autopilot is basically what most people do, which
Yeah,
makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah. And my dad was a rager. And so, yeah. And I was a rager, but I was never allowed to rage at my dad. And so I would rage separate from my dad. I can't remember a time where I yelled back at him, except for as I got older, I finally gave up and said, it doesn't matter how I act. You're going to still be who you are. Right. And I watched Amanda start doing that same thing.
Interesting.
Even as I started making shifts, I had really great friends in my life and who, would mentor her and kind of take her alongside. And they tried to talk to me about it. Like, you seem kind of hard on Amanda. And I'm like, you don't understand. You know, it was always the, you know, like she's not a bad kid, but it's because I'm hard on her.
Wow.
Right.
So you believed,
Yeah.
I'm keeping her in line.
Yeah.
It's working.
It's working. It's
Mhm.
working. Right.
Well, and it didn't help that I was like the good kid in the youth group. Like
Right.
if somebody was grounded, they were still allowed to hang out with me.
Mhm.
And so mom's
Wow.
like, yeah, see, I did a good job.
Right.
It's working.
that
It's
would
working.
validate
Control worked.
your control.
Mhm.
It's like all the parents would come at her of, oh, you need to chill out. And she's like, yeah, but look at Amanda versus look what your kids are doing.
Right.
So I don't blame her.
Totally.
Kept me out of a lot of things because I was too scared of the 3-month groundings.
So talk about how that progressed relationally for you guys.
Yeah, I think there were little things. So she was 16 was when I allowed her to wear makeup.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So very strict.
Very strict.
Mhm.
I was like, I need you to believe that you're beautiful separate from that.
Mm.
I need you to be confident that you're pretty without it. If you want to wear it, you wear it because you want to, not
Sure.
because you need it. I had so many friends that were like that.
Yeah.
And not even close friends. My close friends actually weren't like that. But
Sure.
the, kids in high school, you never see them without makeup on. And
Right.
I always hated that. I was like, don't be that girl.
Yeah.
Totally. Don't be that girl.
Yeah.
So Christmas, we talk about this in the book too. I let her get makeup, and which also felt like a prompting from God, where God's like, loosen the reins a little bit here. Like,
Yeah.
let her wear makeup. She's proven she's, like, give her a break.
Mhm.
And so I give her the makeup, and I did see small, like, little window where she was like, oh, maybe mom's like learning or growing.
Yeah.
And so she started letting me in small ways,
Mm.
very small ways.
Mhm.
And so,
So were you aware by that point that she had locked you out?
no. I didn't
Oh,
find out.
really?
No, I didn't know you locked me out until you told me when we were writing the book.
Mm.
Yeah.
So when emotionally did you start to lock your mom out?
I would say probably 13, I think.
And why then?
There were things that were taken away. Like I remember I wasn't allowed to go to the school I wanted to go to, and I couldn't, then to give a little context, like I wrote a persuasive essay in order to get my first cell phone.
So you had to earn it.
Everything I felt like I had to earn.
Mhm.
And so by the time the makeup situation happened, I specifically,
You were 16 by then.
I was 16, and I remember thinking, don't act too excited, because if you're too excited, she'll take it away.
Wow.
So I'd already learned how to navigate her. I had learned what was our protocol.
You had a deep belief she doesn't want you to be happy.
Yeah,
Is
I did.
that true?
I did. And
So like if I like the makeup too much, she'll take it from me.
yeah, like if I'm too eager about it, because I understood the reasoning behind it too, though. And so, which now I'm so thankful for, because I'm like, I don't need makeup. Like,
Totally.
Or I had friends that were like, I need to put my face on before I go anywhere. And so I remember thinking, even as a young adult, like, oh, this is so nice that my mom did this. But at the same time, in the moment, it was like,
So painful.
yeah.
Well, and then it bears the question, because I am hearing a lot of things that the foundational principles that Melanie brought to the table are actually really cool and great ones. There are some really good ones in there. However, it's kind of the conversation about the approach, right?
Yeah.
And the fear, it was
Right.
what was my motive?
Motivator,
Yeah.
right? That's inside of it.
Yeah, because I think like wanting your daughter to feel empowered and free
Mhm.
is
Is
beautiful.
it great?
But trying to force, like using fear
Yeah.
to enforce that feels very true.
And I was very fear driven, but I did not think so.
Yeah.
You couldn't have told me I was fear.
You would have called it care driven.
That's pretty good. That's fair.
I would have called it careful. I would have called it strategic, smart,
Yeah.
protective.
Totally.
Mhm.
I've done my own work with my therapist, and what I found out is, which was a really hard realization, that especially as an 8 who loves to protect,
Mm-hmm.
protection's like the lowest form of love.
Mm.
It's not. I thought it was this highest form of love.
Mm.
It's really it's low. It's so low. It's
What would be higher than that? So just to give people
I would
ideas?
say empowerment.
Like connection.
Yeah,
Empowerment,
connection,
that's-
empowerment, like true empowerment where she gets to have her own voice. I
Mm.
always tell Amanda specifically, I didn't teach you what to think. I taught you how I would think.
Mm.
I didn't teach you how to think. I taught you how to worry about what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And so that's not empowerment at all.
Yeah.
And I've watched her as an adult have a lot of struggles because of that. Because she didn't get to have the freedom when
To try
inside
test
of safety.
waters, figure
Yeah.
out if it was safe or not. What kinds of damage did it do? Because one of the things I'm hearing is that you learned to be two different people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That you learned to have an internal world
Mhm.
with whatever chaos was in there, and then an external world that looked fine
Oh,
and perfect.
absolutely. And the scariest part is that it translated into the church. And so it was like, okay, I have to look like this reformer and this like super spiritual person who's going to go and change the world and be
Right.
a Billy Graham and
Totally.
the pressure. Meanwhile,
The
I'm like, I don't even know what I want to eat for lunch. Like,
Totally. Yeah.
So it felt I started to feel like I could be a chameleon in any world. And then in the midst of it all, I was like, who even am I? And so then when it came into big decisions, I couldn't find myself in it. And then it cost me some pretty painful things. So,
Like you made decisions that felt like the consequences of the decisions were really high
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
because of that not learning to have a voice
Yes.
and not knowing that you could push back and not knowing your own internal world.
Exactly. Yeah. There were times even growing up that I remember questioning, am I doing this because I have these morals, or am I doing this because this is what my mom would want, or what I think God wants, or the church, or leadership? And so then there was a lot of questioning of my own morals and values too.
That makes sense.
Did you find yourself in other relationships with people bending to their needs and their wants and just like making them yours? Is that?
Oh yeah. People pleasing was super big. And then I noticed a pattern in the type of people I would attract. And then that was something that going into therapy myself, it was like, okay, why am I attracting these kind of personalities and these people that kind of overtake? And then I kind of like, okay, yeah, I fold in and I can figure out where to blend in with
It's like
you.
a very dominant personality that you just bend with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Melanie raises her hand. She finds me everywhere.
she finds me.
Present.
Okay, so
yeah.
you lock her out. Did you have something you want to say?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So you lock her out. You don't even know you're locked out until when do you start to know?
I would say it. Like I would get glimpses of it along the way. When Amanda wouldn't share certain things, I'd be like, "Oh, that's a closed door." Started noticing closed doors.
Yeah.
Right? It was like,
Mhm.
"Oh,
Well, and remember you said, so going back to that relationship, she tells me, she goes, I can tell when you're serious about somebody because you don't give me details. The guys that I'm
Wow.
not serious about, it's
You'll
like,
tell her
listen,
anything.
look,
Yeah.
I'm an open book.
yeah."
Yeah.
So I'm starting to learn this pattern of Amanda's, where I'm like, "Oh, this is what she shares, this is what she doesn't." And I would say you were probably here in right? Like you were here by the time, so you're probably 21
I think 21, yeah.
by the time I realized I was shut out.
And what? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, but what's interesting, the two people thing you were saying, I don't think I even realized that I had shut her out.
Yeah.
In my head, I'm just like, we have a great relationship.
Totally.
My family's super tight.
Yes.
We're all
Yes.
good. Everything looks great.
I do
I think that's
remember that.
Yes. We've talked about
I
this.
do
Yeah.
remember being like, I don't think so. I don't think that that's the truth.
We looked really tight.
That is half of what every consulting session with
Well,
people who have denial about how things have affected them. I'm like, your decisions in life prove different.
exactly.
There's something going on inside.
Yes.
That makes me think something's going on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I actually remember a session with you where we were talking about something with my mom, and you were like, you're not loving your mom when you do this. And I think we were talking about holding back my own feelings about how she affected me.
Yeah.
And you're like, you are protecting her from your feelings, and you're kind of hating her. I don't remember. It was something along those
That's
You're
an Abby
hating
thing
your
to
I
say.
was a lot of an 8 in those years. That's what I could hear. But yeah,
But
I still say things like that.
I kind of needed to be shooken up like
provoke
that,
people.
though. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. I'm like, what? I think at first I was a little offended.
Oh,
Like,
totally.
I hate my mom. Are you kidding me? Who hates their mom? But I needed that. And it was
Yeah.
really interesting because then it was like, I started to slowly see the value of actually being open and honest with her. And that was when she was on her journey of working through things. And then I started the journey and it was like, oh, maybe there's something there.
Yeah. And you, actually, Abby, you told her, you gave her homework. You said, you need to tell your mom this thing.
Mm.
There was something that had happened that she was keeping secret. Nothing really crazy, people, but I'm not going to share it.
I have a tail.
That's funny. That'd be funny. Your mom, if she didn't know that, would be real weird.
That'd be weird, right?
Yeah. And so Amanda came and told me. And when I realized, that was one of the moments I realized how much pressure I was putting on you.
How did you realize that?
Because the difficulty getting things out, and it, in the light of when she's sharing it, it's like on this end, on my end, I'm like, it's actually not as bad. I mean,
You're like listening and you're like, that's not a big deal.
it's bad. I mean, I get it. Like, I know how I raised you and why you would think this is really bad and the end of the world, because that's how I raised you. But I've done a lot of growing since then, and it's okay.
Should we just say what it was so people aren't like, I had sex for the first time? I was like, I feel like there's this big.
I like definitely didn't have any idea what it was.
You couldn't remember?
Nope, don't. I mean, things go in one ear, out another. Didn't you guys hear I have a gene for forgetfulness? Yeah.
I was like, I know your guys' podcast. I know I can say
You
this
can
here.
definitely say that. Okay, so you told her that you'd had sex and you were like, wow, I've raised her to make that so high stakes.
Yes.
That of course she's terrified to tell me.
Terrifying.
And I was like, I'm the worst human being that could be walking around.
Yeah. And so I was like, wow, I've really done some damage here. No, I didn't say that out loud.
It's huge that you were able to recognize that.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah. I didn't say it out loud. And I would say it was probably a year later that I started my own journey after that.
But I remember in that moment, you showed up insanely different than I thought you would.
Mm-hmm.
I expected to fully walk out and be like disowned.
Oh.
And I knew you wouldn't actually.
This
do
is
It's a
very
little
true,
dramatic,
though.
It's true.
No,
Yeah.
that's true. When
No.
you are raised with a strict parent and you do something that you know is outside the rules, it feels so high stakes
Yes.
that connection and attachment could be removed. Love could be removed.
Yes.
Our sense of safety and relationship could be removed if you cross that.
Yep.
So
and I
it
thought she
feels-
looked at me less, you know.
Yeah.
And so, but you didn't.
I
and
didn't. I respected you
so
more.
loving.
And I was aware of how much you're not only working through the fact that you had sex, but the fact that your mom now knows you had sex.
I had to work through that too.
That's very true.
Well, and I remember walking away, and I think honestly that was one of the biggest, like,
Turning
pivotal
points?
moments. Yeah, where it
Wow.
was like, okay, I can trust you with information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that is the moment it started changing. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
This is what I love. I love that messiness can create connection.
It did.
And that's
Yeah.
what I love is like the advice I gave you, which was very good, which
Thank
is
you,
to
Abby.
tell your mom something.
You even texted me the next day, and you're like, "Did you tell her?" And I was like,
Yes.
"You're like, do you need a hug?"
Yeah, it's fair. But the idea of like you allowing her to see your messiness, that created this bridge that started to transform both. And obviously that doesn't work all the time if your parents not on their own journey.
Yeah.
But the beauty of, and I think I knew enough at that point that your parents loved you enough that they would want
Yes.
connection with you.
Yeah.
From what I
And
had
it becomes an invitation regardless, you know, like even if parents don't seem like they have the capacity, maybe they don't, but at least the invitation's been extended. Like,
Yeah.
hey, there's an invitation here. I'm letting you see me. Do you want to show up? You don't want to? Okay. Well, maybe I'll create another one in the future, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that the other thing I love about that story is like you can have years of showing up one way and then you can start to show up different and it
Yes.
can open the door again.
Yeah.
Because
And
I think that's the hope
Yeah.
for people.
Yeah.
And I never could have done that if she wouldn't have taken a chance.
Yeah.
And like, let me try.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, you know,
If any of you out there need to tell your parents something, send them this episode
yeah.
so they can listen to it. And
Every parent that gets
prep
this is
them.
like, oh shit.
What's about to happen? But honestly, like, I'm like not even joking. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, prepare them that you need to talk and you want connection.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah. And I desperately wanted connection
Yeah.
with my kids. And I thought I got that through protection.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's not how you got it. You get it through ownership and vulnerability.
Yeah.
And that when people ask me, how did you do it? That's the two things. Like, you get good at vulnerability and ownership, you're going to win.
What I was going to ask, what did that
What
look
does
like?
that look like? We both.
Are you guys married?
Get out of my head.
We're soulmates. It's confirmed by that one sentence.
Yeah, it is.
You're welcome.
What was the question?
What did ownership and
And
vulnerability
vulnerability
look
look
like
like?
towards you?
Yes.
Yeah, for me, it was, I had to start looking at, like, what's my part? I had to quit looking outward, like what I am controlling externally, to like, why does this bother me so bad?
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of that fearless thing really that was a pivotal moment for me,
Yeah.
realizing how many fears I had and how much those things were driving me unconsciously.
And how
And I
much
had
it was
no
about
idea.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that I had more fear toward Amanda and what could happen to her than I had faith in who she was.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's
And-
really huge.
And it wasn't fair.
Yeah.
She didn't do anything. She really didn't do anything to deserve that. And so I had to get vulnerable and real about that. My effects on another person, the power, something else I didn't realize. And I think probably humans have this struggle. You don't realize how much power you have in people's lives.
Yeah.
Like, I really, it sounds stupid. I'm the mom. Of course you have power. But when you're vulnerable and insecure on the inside, and that hasn't been addressed, you don't realize the effect you have, even to the positive.
Yeah.
So I had to also own the greatness, because I couldn't own the terrible things I did,
Right.
but I equally couldn't own the great things I did either.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so my ownership went both ways.
Yeah. I have to own how I failed and I have to own how I showed up well.
I did.
What are some of the moments that your mom did ownership or vulnerability with you that impacted you?
I think when are we thinking like more present day or back then?
Any of the journey?
Any of the journey.
Mhm.
I think the biggest things was when she would come, like, because as a kid, it felt like it was always, authoritarian, and it was like what she said goes, and that was just it.
Yeah.
But then it kind of started to shift where it was more of a conversation, and it was like, or she would see a shortcoming and she would apologize and be like, "Hey, that's not how I intended to. This is what I actually meant," or "Hey, let's talk about this," or
So it felt more collaborative than there's a
Yes.
dictator.
yes,
Invitational.
it was invitational. Yeah.
Yeah. Invitational.
It was like, oh, my voice matters. I don't know what that is. So it was great.
Have you found that on the journey of your mom taking ownership and being vulnerable, has there been a time where it's created enough safe space for you to unload on her ever? Has there ever been an unloading period or moments
yeah.
or that? Or what does that
Oh, yeah.
look like? And how messy did that get?
Amanda's unloading. Imagine this cute little bunny rabbit getting mad. and then Amanda can share now.
That's funny. That's funny.
I think it's been like, it depends. There's been different versions of it, but there's been times of tears and crying and just like, I think it took a while, but I finally had gotten to a point where I was able to like be super honest and spill my guts out. But there were times in my own therapy where we had kind of worked through some of this where it was like, okay, where can you find your power? And so I remember in a session, it was like, oh, I feel it in my legs. Like, that's like, there's like this power in my legs. And so she was like, okay, like when you're having these hard conversations specifically with your parents, think about that.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember there being a time when we were having a conversation and my dad was saying something, and I remember just sitting there thinking about my legs, and I'm like, and I was able to kind of hone in on that and be like, no, actually, the reason I'm going through this is because you did this. You made me this way. And it was mostly towards my dad, but it was geared toward both of them because they're a collective. Like you're both part of it.
Yeah, there was a lot of it that night that she had already processed with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was more of a supportive role.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, think about that, babe. Like,
Yeah.
We did do that.
yeah, we did do that.
That was the nice thing too.
Yeah.
Because kind of processing with my mom first, it kind of has opened the door with my dad where my mom's been able to be a little bit of a cheerleader of like, later on they walk away and she's like, well, you should probably work on that. And then he has to go deal with it,
On that note, I think about some of the messes that Melanie's made over here, and obviously we all have our possibilities of making messes. I was curious, like, as she's done her repair work, are there parts of your side of this, the experience where you felt necessary to do your own repair work with her and bring in some level of ownership and vulnerability on your side?
I would say yes. Yes. Question mark. As I looked to her for an answer, I'm like, have I? Absolutely. Because I think this whole journey requires vulnerability because without it, if it was just her, it would just be one-sided. And so I think me allowing myself to go on the journey of figuring out, okay, who am I? What are my morals and values? And how much of this was my mom and how much of this is me? And what parts of even what was my mom do I want to take and create my own ownership in that? The makeup being one of them where I'm like, oh, I'm so thankful that she did that. And so then I take that on as my own. And there's been a lot of forgiveness involved in that. And then I think some of the vulnerability is showing up in ways where I bring her in and I open up and I share super deep. I mean, everything about me.
So it went from being locked out to like now she knows everything.
Yeah.
So it
And
sounds
that
so
feels safe to you?
It feels safe. Yeah.
Does it feel beneficial?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it helps that she's a life coach too. So I get lots of bennies on that. But because when she made a comment about how she desperately wanted that connection, I did too. I really desperately wanted connection with my mom. I would see other people's relationships and I would be jealous of that and be like, oh, I wish that me and my mom were like friends.
Right.
And so getting to that point where she was working on stuff and I was working on stuff, there's just, being able to have these conversations, it was like, oh, this is possible. I never, ever thought that I would have a friendship with my mom, and she's one of my best friends now.
Wow.
I can't help but think how interesting it is that, that control kills connection.
It does.
Like you're sitting there out saying, I want my mom to be my friend. But friendship really resides within that space of like a control-free space, right? Where I can be fully me and fully messy, and someone goes, oh, I'm just here to see you and understand you and support you in this process and be someone to lean on. And that ability to have that really and I'm saying this out loud for people who are listening, like if we want to engage, if there's parents out there who are like, I want to be able to be friends with my kids, well, there's going to have to be some control potentially inside of your life that you're going to have to die to and actually become someone who's just a landing space for the open dialogues that are filled with all the true messiness. Because like if I sit down with one of my friends, I'm going to tell them my craziest shit inside of my life because I know they're not going to try to control me and chastise me and punish me. They're just going to be like, dude, sounds pretty crazy.
Yeah.
How can I love you right now inside of this?
Yeah, you have to put away that fix it energy. You can't fix it. It's not about fixing it anymore. And that's what I had to put away.
Yeah.
And I still wrestle with that still to this day.
Yeah.
Not so much with Amanda, but like with my other kids. So I have a different journey with them, right? And so I'll be like, ooh, fix it energy. This isn't good. So I had to go deal with myself. And I'll own it too. I'll be like, hey, I'm like in some fix it energy right now. Maybe we should not have this conversation. And or if I already did it, then I go back and apologize. Hey, sorry, I was trying to fix it. This is what you deserve to have. Yeah. You needed a mom who was just going to sit and listen and be present with you and support you and be your cheerleader, your witness.
Yeah.
Not you don't need me to come with a wrench.
Yeah.
You know, you need me to come as a witness and
good.
just support. And so,
I will just say for some of you out there, because there's a swinging culture currently going from the extreme of lots of boundaries and strictness to no boundaries. And boundaries are beneficial.
they are.
Control is not. So
No.
I just want to clarify
So
that because I see a lot of parents with no boundaries, and that creates another kind of chaos that doesn't feel safe.
Yes.
So boundaries are valuable outside of control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. And we've had we've had that with between me and Amanda where I've been like, hey, that sounds like something really great to talk to your therapist about.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
You know,
That's
like
good.
so that's like the best way to give a boundary.
Well, and you even had to have other boundaries with me where there was a time when I was making certain decisions that were super hurtful for myself.
Yeah.
And I had already been on a journey of opening up and bringing her in and processing. And she had to be like, hey, I can't handle you talking to me about this anymore. And I was living at our house. So it was like, what?
Yeah.
I process everything with you. What are you talking
Totally.
about? And she's like, this hurts so much, how much this is hurting you.
Yes.
And then I was
Yeah.
like, okay.
That's huge.
And then
But
I
that's
realized
not
how I affect
control.
her.
That's
No.
No, it's a boundary.
I'm vulnerable.
I'm creating connection. I'm
Yeah.
protecting
Yes.
our connection.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's ultimately you managing yourself well,
Yeah.
because you're like,
Yeah.
even the ability, Melanie, for you to probably recognize, like, if I keep hearing this type of stuff that feels really painful, it's even the potential that I could go into control and try to go into
Yes.
fix it.
100%.
So actually respecting and loving the relationship is to say, like, I know where my capacity begins and ends.
Yeah,
And so I want you to be heard on this. You should maybe share that with your therapist.
absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
and it also showed me like, oh, I actually impact my mom.
Yeah.
Like I affect her
Mhm.
and I want to protect that relationship too. She's not just like a dumping ground where I spew all my problems out
Yeah.
onto.
Thank God. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, you got a therapist. Good.
Please, everybody, get a therapist.
And I love
It's very true.
I love that you've gone from control to being a life coach, and within being a life coach, you haven't weaponized that as another way to control
no.
and
no.
take that. You're like, oh yeah, even though I have these tools and stuff,
I'm not the person.
I'm not the
to fix
person.
you.
I can lend
Yeah.
some of this over to
Yeah.
you, but you need to go over there. That's really cool.
Yeah.
How long
And-
did the reconciliation process take?
That's a good question. I would say from the start of Amanda like sharing about having sex until now, we've been walking.
Probably
in-
like 10 years.
it's been 10 years since that, but I would say maybe 9.
I would say 8 or 9.
But I would say, yeah, like full on where we're talking today. This
Mhm.
is we've been here probably the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Which I think
So
is
like
great.
7 years.
Maybe
of
even
healing.
3 years.
Yeah,
7
to
8
8
years.
Yeah,
6 to.
Maybe 4. No. Just kidding.
I'll just keep changing the numbers. It's okay.
But yeah, it's a process and
It
it's
was a
not
process.
easy.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not easy.
What has
And
it
even-
been like for you? Recognizing things you've done and then having to own your shit and then walking through the pain that you've literally seen.
Oh my God. Some of the hardest things you'll do is witnessing the pain you caused.
Yeah.
Especially people you love. And I on top of everything I've done with ownership and vulnerability, one of the top things that I've learned from you guys, and I would say number one tool in the arsenal, shame resilience. Because humility is a huge part of this, you know, and if you're going to have shame resilience, if you're going to have true humility,
You have to have shame resilience.
you have to have shame resilience. And so deal with your shame monsters. And shame shows up in all kinds of different, like, it gets sneaky. It gets
It
sneaky.
does.
And I would say if you're defensive,
Yep.
there's probably shame.
Absolutely.
And so
If you
really,
want to blame them,
yeah,
there's shame.
if it's defensive and you're blaming, you got shame. And I
Or
just,
denial also is shame.
yeah.
No,
And I
that's-
made it kindergarten level when I started. I was
Mhm.
like, A is shame. That's the first step. Deal with your shame. And then vulnerability. And actually, second for me was ownership and then
Mhm.
vulnerability.
Yeah.
And so, and when I say vulnerability, I mean getting to a place where now I can narrate my inner world
It's good.
and in a way that lets everybody feel comfortable. Like, oh,
Like, give an example.
hey, Abby and Justin, I'm feeling really nervous about coming on your podcast.
Right.
Mm.
Like actually knowing what your
Right.
emotions
Yeah.
are and being able to say them.
Yeah. Or maybe I literally said this, or maybe it's excitement showing up and I'm like, I don't know. It might be one or both.
Yeah, totally.
So, right. Like I let you guys be informed on how I'm showing
Yes.
up. So you're not sitting there trying to figure it out. Right.
Yes.
Like, is Mel okay?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on? No, I'm excited and I'm nervous.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like even just small ways like that. But as big as hey, when you chose A, I felt really scared. And I thought, I'm going to be in this forever with you, and it's never going to get better.
Mm.
And it's everything that I've never wanted for your life.
Yeah.
And it hurts really bad to watch this.
Yeah.
It's like my breath is being taken away.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's my narrative with no guilt, right? Like, this
Yeah.
not,
That's not blame language.
you make me feel like crap.
Yeah. Totally.
Every time you do that, oh, here we go again, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so, true ownership where you're not laying guilt at the foot of another person.
But you're still owning your experience.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people, after they've really hurt somebody, they feel like almost in debt,
Yes.
where then they can't have boundaries or needs or their own emotions matter.
Yeah.
And so it kind of flips where it's like, it becomes where you feel boundaryless.
Yeah.
For a while, you know.
And if I hadn't dealt with my shame, she wouldn't have been able to keep coming to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, shame
Yeah,
would
that's
not
true.
let her to keep like, hey, we already talked about this. I thought we were okay. Why are you coming back to me? about
That's
this?
exactly what shame sounds like. We already dealt with this. Okay. I said I'm sorry.
I said
I'm sorry.
Exactly. But instead, what it is like, I remember one time she came and she said, I don't remember what it was she said, but I leaned back and I was like, this is something we've discussed before. I just go, wow, that Melanie was a bitch, wasn't she? I didn't know what else to say.
Totally. Yeah.
Blame
hard.
her.
I think that there's something incredibly healing to the human soul. I think this is one of the hardest things. One of my friends talks about the only way to become not dissociated, to become more human, is to face the pain that you've caused people.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean getting lost in the shame of it, because some people do that and they like, you know, they literally lose themselves in the like, I ruined everything.
Right.
And that's not shame resilience.
No.
But the ability to actually grieve. I think like both
huge.
me and Justin have spent a good amount of time in the past few years grieving the way that we have seen the things that we've done and how
Yeah.
it's affected different people. And I think that is such an important part of staying human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
hard though. It's
Yeah.
probably one of the hardest things to do.
It's
Yeah.
the hardest, and you have to face it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you
Because
face
you're facing something about you.
and
like-
see, I faced it about me first,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's not the first time she's coming to me. Right. Because I'm already
Yeah.
doing my work. I'm facing it first.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's not getting that first response of, oh my God, what did I do?
Yeah.
And defense or whatever. And so I think one important part that I want to bring up that I thought was important was environments
Mm-hmm.
and how that matters. You know, we talked about childhood. My dad was controlling. But our therapist, we actually had a therapist we both saw individually.
Cool.
Mm.
And the therapist told Amanda, she asked you that question about like if your mom went to a different church
Mm-hmm.
and
Would she have been different?
would she have been as controlling or something like
Yeah.
that? Is that what she said?
Yeah, she said, yeah, that's exactly
Yeah.
what she said.
And Amanda had a major revelation. Like, wow, no.
Mm.
No.
Mm.
And so for Amanda at that time, it gave her a lot of compassion.
Mhm.
I feel like I'm telling your story.
That's okay.
I want you to tell.
What was it like for you?
Yeah, it gave me a ton of compassion because I was like, I already knew that the church that I grew up in was very controlling. And when she said that, I was like, oh, this could have all been different if we had been in a different environment. Like, because it was exactly how she grew up. It was like she was drawn to a church that would cater to that and feed it and grow
Yep.
it.
Yep.
Even though those were the very people coming at her saying you're controlling,
Right.
they helped develop it.
Right.
And so looking back, it was like, oh, this could have been way different.
Something I love that you guys just brought up is for a relationship to be healed, both people have to have more understanding for each other.
We
Yeah.
do.
And I
Yeah.
think a lot of times
Understanding
kids
stories.
just want to be understood.
Yeah.
And I think like healing, like there's been moments of healing as you've understood her.
Mm-hmm.
Like the
Yeah.
compassion towards her has actually probably been healing towards you, because every time you have compassion towards her, it's de-villainizing
Yeah.
what she
Yes.
felt towards you.
Yes.
So even like when she retells you the story about her fears versus who you are, and you actually feel impacted by that, it's starting to rewire your brain. Oh, she did love me more than I knew.
Mhm.
And then your brain is able to go back and collect more
That's good.
of the love
Yes.
that was there, that was being blocked from your view of what was happening.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting how before I thought I was doing that, but it was just that self-protection
Mm-hmm.
of being afraid of diving into that because it felt like too big.
Yeah.
And how like I thought I was doing it. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I understand.
I
Like, she was just
understand
doing
you.
the best she could.
Mhm.
You know, I've heard so many people say that about their parents. They did the best they could with what they had.
Yeah.
But it's such a cop out, and it's that protection instead
Yeah.
of actually diving into it and being like, oh, I see it.
Yeah.
And I feel it.
Actually like knowing her experience.
Yes.
Mhm.
And that's what real intimacy is. And I just wanted to point it out because I think that's been a beautiful thing that you guys, there's real intimacy.
Yeah.
You see each other.
Mm-hmm.
You see her. She sees you. You're
Yeah.
able to communicate about it. It's
Yeah.
very, very beautiful.
That's awesome. I really think that your guys' story is a beacon of hope for so
Yes.
many people. And
Right.
I'm sure like people being able to even get a hold of the book and really watch an exchange, a vulnerable exchange as two people are telling each side of their story and their experience. Because a lot of times we don't ever get a chance to understand someone else's experience, which is what you guys gave yourselves, each other the opportunity to do, was understand each other's experience
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and engage that. And I think that, again, there's such a beacon of hope in that. Like there are strategic steps to repairing deeply broken relationships that have been shut off and abandoned altogether. But it did take it took bravery inside of it.
Yes.
It took, I've seen parents be very offended at the idea of being the one to start it off, but you're the adult, you're the
Yeah.
parent,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
like when it comes to me with other people that I lead, even if I didn't initiate
Yep.
a brokenness, I am a leader, and in
Yeah.
that leadership role, it falls to me to go, hey, I'm going to own this and model this
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and start this. And that's actually an empowering thing. That's not
It is.
that's not like oh shit, I have to do this. It's like, wow, I actually have
Yeah.
a place where I can be empowered. And that's something that you did. And I think that what a cool invitation to so many parents out there to be like, hey, you can lay down your self-protective sword.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You don't have to feel shame.
Yeah.
You can actually begin the process on your end of modeling something by dealing with your own shame and your own judgment that you have and stuff like that. So there's a lot of beauty inside of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you guys because you're a huge part of that story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you,
And
guys.
honestly, I don't know where it would be at this point in time, 10 years later. Yeah, because it's huge, like the shame stuff and the ownership stuff. And I got all that from you guys.
Yeah.
And so it's a whole family that got impacted. And
Yeah.
when I wanted to write this book, I originally wanted to write it for my legacy. I got a
I love
tattoo
that.
of legacy on my leg.
Love it.
It's on my leg, you see.
Honey. Yeah.
Hysterical.
And so, but I wanted them to know what I fought for. I wanted them to know how hard it is. And
Yeah.
and it's somewhat of a passing of a torch, but it grew more in my heart where I want to pass this torch to other moms and daughters that they can do this too.
Mm-hmm.
That there's nothing special about me and Amanda.
Right.
Apart from that, we said yes, like you talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, get help. Don't do it alone. I didn't do it alone. I
Yep.
had people in my life, and
Yep.
you don't need specifically Justin and Abi to show up at your
Sure.
door. You got them on the podcast. Get books. I read books,
Mhm.
right? Like there's people that can mentor you through their stories and books and podcasts and movies. There's movies that mentored me. And so this
And
isn't
even,
something
I
you do
think-
alone.
You went on your own pain journey.
I did.
The more you
Yeah.
understood your
it's
own
true.
story, like
Mhm.
here's what
Yeah.
from the outside looking in, You learned about your own story.
Yeah.
You learned about your own trauma. You learned about your own pain. You learned about why you did what you did.
Yeah.
So you actually have compassion for yourself for why you did what you did.
I do.
Because you know now.
Yeah.
That's a big difference. Understanding, oh, of course I did this because I had all these protectors from this and this and this. Of course I did this.
Yep.
Your self-awareness is what allowed you to be able to, like, your own journey with your own pain.
Yeah.
Learning to love yourself, learning to have compassion, then overflowed into relationship.
That's good.
Yeah.
So real quickly, like if people want to, because I know the book's still waiting to come out, what's a way that they can connect with you?
Yeah. I made a freebie for all your listeners, and it's being vulnerable and taking ownership checklist. It has some reflection questions and some calls to action.
Cool. Real good.
And I'm excited about it. I want to share that with everybody. And they'll put their email in, and when the book's ready, I'll just send out an email letting everyone know.
And where can they go get that at?
You're going to put it in the show notes.
Okay.
A link in the show notes.
Oh.
I will drop a link in the show notes. That sounds great.
That's
So
what
look in the
we'll
show
do.
notes on this. And before we wrap this up, I want to tell you guys, like right now, we're the Pathway to Freedom has opened up for you guys to come participate
very exciting
with Pathway to Freedom. And this is our 3rd year of doing it. And we've had some incredible transformation stories out of that. But
I just had somebody tell me the other day about how they'd been in counseling for like the last 5 years, and they watched Pathway to Freedom, and all of a sudden like connected all of the things. And they're like, they're doing the steps that they had been like vaguely trying to understand the concepts.
Yeah. And what's really cool is the Pathway to Freedom. We've been talking about LCMC, our Life Consulting Masterclass. It's a year-long transformational school.
Yeah.
And if people want to partake in LCMC, Pathway to Freedom is a prerequisite to that. And it starts in August and then wraps up in time to have a break. And then LCMC is going to start in January this year. And if you participate in Pathway to Freedom and you apply to LCMC, we will apply credit from Pathway to Freedom to LCMC.
Basically, Pathway to Freedom is a requirement to get in, because it is the foundational tools everybody needs to work through their own stuff and to help other people work through their stuff. Pizzi was just telling me today, we're back to the tools in her marriage. She's like, we've learned a lot, but we're right back to using the basics. And so these are the basics. So if you want to do our Life Consulting Masterclass, start with Pathway, and you'll never lose money because you'll get it back if you do the class. Yeah,
it's really cool. And ultimately, it's some of the foundation that helps you understand the triggers or even go into your own story. It's helping you understand your own story and what's the driving force inside of your life.
If you're listening to Melanie and you're like, I got to figure that stuff out.
This is it. Yeah, Pathway is going to be a great jumping off point.
It is.
Yep. So you can go to Justin and Abi, that's abi.com, and you can check out the Pathway to Freedom.
How can people find you if they want to?
MelanieHuggard.com.
Great.
That's great.
Or Instagram.
What's your Instagram?
Mom-daughter
duo.
Mom-daughter connection.
Is that what it's called?
Oh, mom-daughter connection. Sorry.
I don't know my own connection.
I love that.
That's Huggard, Huggard.
Yeah. Melanie, Melanie. And we share about our process on Instagram. So mom-daughter connection.
I've never seen that.
Oh,
did you invite me?
Yeah, I haven't. I'm following.
Okay. You're better than me.
Yes, I am.
I hear you.
He's on the in crowd.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us, guys.
I love you both.
Thank you.
Love
you
both.
guys.
Thank you.
All right, everybody.
Oh, also share this to all of your people that need to work through stuff.
Yeah, really.
Or if you need to drop a bomb on your parents.
All right, go away. Bye now.
Bye.